Greetings, my people. Greetings, my people. Greetings, my people. Today is Thursday, March 19th, 2026. The time is 9:36 a.m. And as you see in my title, I titled this one, LeBron has destroyed the spirit of the game. He has destroyed the who? He has destroyed the spirit of the game. Just give me 1 second. He has destroyed the spirit of the game. MJ, and I was really intending to do this uh, live some time ago when it first happened, but I don't know. I think life started life. Um, where Michael Jordan sits down with Mike Tirico, and he talks about this whole GOAT debate and this whole narrative. And really, the first person that I heard really coin and talk about great GOAT from a greatest of all time perspective was LL Cool J on his GOAT album, right? And he came out and said he was the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And I don't like it. And let me say this, let me preface this by saying I am not a Michael Jordan fan. I respect Michael Jordan. I respect the hell out of Michael Jordan. I was able to see Michael Jordan play a lot in real time growing up in the 80s and 90s. So I captured the essence of him in real time, not just highlights or YouTube or these debates. And I'm looking for something else. Um, and I was able to capture him, and I was able to capture the real live, uh, like Mike commercials. If I could be like Mike, and the best way I could talk to the youth and try to explain to the younger generation, just like right now, this era or their era, it has a certain energy to it. It has a certain feel, right? And watching LeBron James, like the thing I don't like about um because this is nothing but the Willie Lynch chip, right? This is nothing but the Willie Lynch chip because it always puts us opposite or rivals or versus, right? So, and then even with putting those verses, there's never any clear cut debate. There's never any clear cut where you can draw this line because it's all opinion based, right? But this is how they get us off our square. That they get us to instead of celebrating quote unquote black excellence, we rival it. We pit it against each other, and we've always done it, right? We've always done it, whether it was Little Romeo and Bow Wow, whether it was Brandy and Monica. We always have to, and that is always making us fight for scraps, right? Making us fight. And I remember Monique once said, she said she was talking to somebody. I forget the lady she said she was talking to. And she said, and I'm paraphrasing, that the young lady was talking about taking the top spot. And she said, what top spot, babe? She said, they have you fighting for an imaginary spot. Notice, and anytime I say this, anytime I make comparisons with Europeans or white folks, it's always as a teaching lesson. It's always as a comparison from a teaching wise of how they don't their dysfunction is in a whole nother way, but they don't do this whole dysfunctional game of one can only be this because they understand that they control the narrative, they control the game, they control the matrix, so to speak, right? So they don't have to pit Joe Montana versus Tom Brady. And it doesn't have to be these hour long debates. It doesn't have to be these crash out sessions where it begins to get personal. Because what you end up doing is taking away from the fabric of something that was so special. And I'm going to get to why I said LeBron has destroyed the fabric of this game. He has destroyed the spirit, the essence of basketball. He has made it to his personality. And this is not an attack on LeBron James because I know how his fan base is. And we have to understand how he has been used to dilute masculinity. We got to understand how he has been used to dilute masculinity. I'm going to say that again. And when I say he has destroyed the spirit of the game, I can only speak from my era to now. I can't speak on the 70s. I didn't witness it. I can't speak on Oscar Roberts. I can't speak on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar playing in his peak. I can't speak on Wilt Chamberlain. I can't speak on Bob Cousy. I can only speak on that of what is put in front of my face. I can only give a limited opinion. And this is what happens with these debates. They're only limited opinions, right? Okay, and let me see how I want to say this. Speaking from the 80s to now, I got to see real passion. I got to see real competition. I got to see real competition. And the internet has a lot to do with the dysfunction that is spreading, right? But I got to see passion. I got to see the celebration of what y'all would call black excellence, right? Because it's funny how we do this whole black excellence thing until it gets to a point of where we have to celebrate multiple black people at one time that you like. And then it becomes like two pit bulls with the cage doors unleashed, right? So me respecting Michael Jordan growing up, never being a real fan. I've always been a Hawks fan, and I've always been a Lakers fan. I've always been a Hawks fan, and I've always been a Lakers fan, right? So I respected the Chicago Bulls. I respected their dominance. I respected seeing the different teams, the B.J. Armstrongs. I respected seeing Ron Harper. I respected seeing Tony Kukoc. I respected seeing Luke Longley. I respected seeing how the game was presented to me as a young man. There was no arguments. There were rivals. There were the Knicks versus the Heat. I remember seeing live that fight that they show all the time where what's his name? Jeff Van Gundy. Hang on one second. Hello? Yes. Okay. I don't know what that was. Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. But I remember seeing these things in real time, right? And I remember seeing Jeff Van Gundy in real time try to hang on to the player, to the legs of his player to stop this fight, right? Because that was the spirit of competition. They weren't trying to hurt each other. I'm pretty sure a lot of them didn't like each other. But it was never this diva type of energy. I'm sure you always have had egos, but it was never this diva energy. There was always like this one that he was hard as a fucker to beat. But there was also a respect, right? So that bleeds over into the 90s. And then I remember seeing before, like I said, the greatest person that I've ever seen play basketball is Kobe Bryant. My opinion. The greatest person that I've ever seen with these two eyes is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant is the best basketball player I've ever seen play, hands down, over Michael Jordan. And it was because of the way he approached the game, because he didn't have all of the athleticism, all of the mechanics, the size of some of these ones that we look at now. He was cerebral. It was his work ethic, it was his mentality, right? Those were the things that I respected. So in come the 90s. And before Kobe Bryant, it was Penny Hardaway. Penny Hardaway was bad, motherfucker. Before his injury started to happen, Penny Hardaway was that dude. And what I don't like about, because it's disingenuous to the youth. So the youth are only repeating regurgitated talking points and saying things like Shaq carried Kobe. Shaq carried Kobe. And it's so disingenuous and disrespectful to the game, right? When we have to go back to, we got to go back to several of those teams. Like I said, I just mentioned the Orlando Magic team. That Orlando Magic team that played the Houston Rockets in the finals, that was a great team. That was a great team. See, you have to understand in real time how great these players were. Not YouTube time. Not Stephen A. Smith podcast, not Shay Shay talking point time. Real time. So you had Nick Anderson. You had Bo Outlaw. You had Darrell Armstrong. You had Scott Skiles. You had a great team. But how come if Shaq carried Kobe, how come he couldn't carry Penny Hardaway? If Shaq carried Kobe, how come when he left to go to the Lakers, how come he couldn't carry Eddie Jones and Nick Van Exel? You get what I'm asking? So when we're saying he carried him, no. I saw those games in real time. They were a duo. They were a 1-2 punch. They were a 1-2 punch that complemented each other. Sometimes they rival each other because of egos, but they were a 1-2 punch. It was what I'm explaining, that it wasn't all of this versus Willie Lynch stuff. It wasn't this corny crown yourself and walk around on the court like you are this. It wasn't having a ratty representative like Rich Paul that's going around shaping narratives. It wasn't a focal point to destroy, to lower the bar and rewrite history to fit the narrative of a spoiled basketball player. Is LeBron James great? Absolutely. See, that's the thing about so-called black excellence. We don't have to take away from each other to give props to the other. But is he all of this GOAT, greatest of all time? See, this is why they say repetition is the mother of learning. Because if you repeat something long enough, if you repeat to a person's mind that Pepsi is the greatest. Pepsi is the greatest. Pretty much how they make you like those songs on the radio, and you find yourself singing these songs, and you're like, why? I don't even like this song. Because repetition, they keep playing it over and over. So these are not isolated incidents when you're seeing him at the ESPYs, or when you're seeing him and his family, and his wife is calling him the GOAT. He says that his son have to call him the GOAT. And, like, you don't have to do this. Like, and this is why I said he has destroyed the spirit of the game because it's whiny. So when we say we grow up in our era, this is not an old head because that's the Willie Lynch chip, right? The old versus the young. Pitch the young slave versus the old slave. The old slave versus the young slave. Right? So this is what they have done drop by drop over a period of time. They have introduced these debates that you can never walk away with a clear cut. Who is this? Because see, you can always put stats. You can always put stats. You can always put stats. That's why when I talk to a person, I say, well, what is your criteria? What is your criteria to be the so-called GOAT, right? For me, and this is what's always funny to me, because a young guy did it on one of my other social media pages. I said, I commented and I said, Kobe Bryant is the greatest of all time, in my opinion, that I have seen. Only what I have seen. Like I said, I can't speak on Kareem in his prime. I saw a little bit of Magic, but I was still a young man. As I'm growing older and can really understand the game fundamentally, it was Kobe Bryant over Michael Jordan, my opinion. And he said, the GOAT with one Finals MVP. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And it was very dismissive. And that is the problem. That we rival each other. And then I made a TikTok short when I said about saying that the Lakers now, the current Lakers, aren't gonna be great until they move on from this LeBron James experiment. He has done enough. But see what he wants to do, because he's just like these Europeans, he wants to shape the narrative definitively for his advantage. So what he wants, in my opinion, is to everywhere you see in the record books, you see his name. And every time somebody looking, they say, oh, he was this, he was this. They equate numbers and stats with being the greatest. They equate records with being the greatest. Here's back to Kobe having the one Finals MVP argument. I said, okay, well, because see, and this is the thing with LeBron fans, they lack context. They don't like context, and they only like things that fit their narrative, right? So when you say, okay, Kobe had this Finals, they said no, one MVP, not Finals. They said one MVP, and meaning league MVP. And I said, okay, cool, but how can you be the GOAT with 6 losses in the finals? And then this is what they do. When you match and ask that question, what they're gonna do is go do this whole weird thing of, MJ wasn't this without Scottie Pippen. They didn't do that. They didn't do that in the 90s. We're saying what Michael Jordan was without Scottie Pippen, but what was Scottie Pippen's record without Michael Jordan? But more importantly, why are we doing this? This is one of the greatest teams that was ever to step foot on the court, but it's only for us. Because they don't have these conversations about Dan Marino versus Peyton Manning, Eli Manning versus Peyton Manning. Who's the greater Manning? They don't do that. Because what they understand is it takes away the narrative of them being great. It takes away the narrative of them being the great. Notice somebody says Tom Brady is the GOAT. There's no pushback. Think about it. Because this stuff is only for us to keep us at each other's throat. So how else did LeBron James destroy the spirit of the game? Ever since he has been the focal point. Because I would argue after players like Vince Carter, after players like uh, Kevin Garnett. After those guys, those real dogs retired, it more just became he became the older elder statesman. So now, so now the competition is a lot weaker. You're constantly stacking teams. You constantly have to have the best players around you. You can't develop a chemistry. What we don't understand about the game of basketball, it's always predicated, in my opinion, on chemistry and confidence. Two things that LeBron James teams always seem to lack. You know why they lack confidence and chemistry? Because the narrative always has to blame somebody. Always. Whether it was blaming Darvin Ham, whether it was blaming Frank Vogel, whether it was blaming Russell Westbrook, whether it began to blame D'Angelo Russell, whether it just always has to blame somebody. And as we're seeing this, as you're sitting on ESPN and you're listening to these experts tell you that Russell Westbrook is the problem on the team. Notice how they did. Notice how they did when Russell Westbrook was playing for the Lakers. Notice how they did constantly, almost on a daily basis. It was a spit on Russell campaign. It was a spit on Russell Westbrook campaign. It was always highlighting his turnovers. Now this is what was disingenuous and just downright fraudulent about it, because they would highlight Russell Westbrook's 5 or 6 turnovers. But LeBron James would have 5 turnovers too. Oh, but those don't matter because his numbers and his stats said something else. So let's not focus on his turnovers. Turnovers are turnovers. Let's focus on Russell Westbrook turnovers. Let's make him the poison person on the team. And this is the reason I don't respect AD, because AD was just like a follower. He was just following the tune, right? And I remember seeing one game that they were treating Russell Westbrook like a mean girl. They were behaving like Regina George, and they were giving him the silent treatment. Now this goes into your team chemistry and confidence. This goes into your team's chemistry and confidence. So you need all your players to be functioning and believe that they can do this. Whether they have the talent or not, leadership starts at the top. But because he's the king of shaping narratives, he's the king of constantly moving the goalposts. He has Rich Paul and Clutch Sports having their clutches. There's that name. They got their clutch. They have their clutches and everything. And the league began to take on this diva behavior. This is why you won't see top athletes get in the slam dunk contest anymore. Because everything is about a brand. Everything is more about me ball now. The younger generation feels like everything has to center around them because LeBron James feels like everything centers around him. That's not the love of the game. Nobody is bigger than the program. And when you tell me a person with a 4-6 record is the greatest of all time, I have a hard time believing that. But we can't say Kobe Bryant's 5-2 record because they'll say, "Oh well, Shaq carried him. He played with Shaq." How does Kobe get penalized for playing with Shaq, but Magic doesn't get penalized for playing with Kareem? LeBron doesn't get penalized for playing with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and they try to minimize Chris Bosh. This is what I mean. This is what I mean by moving the goalposts. They try to minimize Chris Bosh as if Chris Bosh was just some Joe come lately. These were three franchise players. These were three franchise players in their prime. Because in my opinion, again, and if anybody have a different one, put it in the comments. The first super team that I witnessed, and it was an epic flop, was the Houston Rockets team when they tried to send Scottie Pippen over there. And Scottie Pippen didn't enjoy playing with out of shape fat Charles Barkley. Because Scottie Pippen came from a standard of greatness and excellence and playing on that Chicago Bulls team. And then, in my opinion, you can say, here comes let me see which one. The Lakers team. The Lakers team with Gary Payton and Karl Malone. But they weren't in their prime. See, the key word with that Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, they were all in their prime. And then you had your Boston Celtics. Now, they were in their, in my opinion, they were in their veteran bag. You had a veteran Ray Allen. You had a veteran Paul Pierce, a veteran KG, and a young dog in Rondo, who was the engine on that team. And that team was just strictly poorly coached. For Doc Rivers only to have one championship with the teams that he's had is just freaking ridiculous. Doc Rivers is probably the worst coach in NBA history that has had the most talent. He's had some of the greatest teams. Like right now, what he's doing with that Milwaukee team, and I think Giannis Antetokounmpo should stay there. I think he should stay there and suffer because of the way they treated Adrian Griffin. Adrian Griffin, now correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm not mistaken, that team was 30-19 before Doc Rivers took it over. And it went into the toilet because Doc Rivers can't coach. Right? But the spirit of the game died when Kobe Bryant retired. Because that was the last of the players that would challenge his teammates. And then you see a lot of these players come out and they say, you know, you listen to Jeremy Lin, you listen to Dwight Howard, and they come out and they say, well, Kobe was mean to me. I didn't have fun playing with Kobe. Kobe was mean. Lamar Odom don't talk like that. Sasha Vujacic don't talk like that. Pau Gasol don't talk like that. Because there was a standard. There was a standard. The standard now is get LeBron his ring. And if you can't do it, we're going to devalue you. We're going to shit on you. We're going to lower your trade value. We're going to slander your name all over ESPN. Shay Shay going to get up there and go crazy. Skip. Shannon Sharp is gone. As my man over there at Dreamers Pro Sports say, Shannon Sharp is going to get over there and twerk it all up. I've never seen anything like this. To where there are arguments and where you are devaluing. You're not appreciating all of these different guys. Newsflash, my people, there's enough room for all of us. There's enough room for Kobe Bryant's mental toughness. There's enough room for MJ's total dominance. There's enough room for LeBron James's longevity. We will never see longevity like that again. I'm so not a LeBron James fan. But what I will not do is lie, and I will not move the goalposts and say things that just aren't true because I don't like him. That's disingenuous. I don't like what he has done. I don't like how he drug his son out as a prop. I don't like how there aren't really any men in the NBA. Everybody's like they're afraid. You just have a bunch of ass kissers, and that wasn't what I was used to growing up seeing. You're used to growing up seeing a different level of masculinity, right? This is what I mean when I say he diluted his era and him being in charge diluted masculinity because masculinity became more softer. Now we see these young boys, they paint their nails, they do all of these things. You didn't see Akeem Olajuwon painting his nails. What I don't like is because we have to step on the forefathers, and we don't have to do that, people. We ain't got to step on the forefathers. You don't get a Carmelo Anthony if you don't get a Bernard King. You don't get a Kobe Bryant if you don't get a Michael Jordan. You don't get a LeBron James if you don't get a Charles Barkley or a Magic Johnson. You don't get a Giannis Antetokounmpo if you don't get a LeBron James. But what they have done, they have infiltrated and they have destroyed the mind so much that we're at a point of no return. They're actually shitting on Kobe Bryant's legacy. You know the reason? Because at first, I didn't know Bam's 83 was atrocious as it was. When I first saw it, I was like, oh shit, My first initial comments were, records are meant to be broken. My initial comments were, records are meant to be broken. But when I saw how he did it, that's when the disgust came in. Because at first, I just saw, what's my brother, my man over there, Ticket TV, who does a great, I saw him. He was the first one I saw reporting it, and I thought it was a misprint. I was like, Bam, out of Bayou? But when I saw how they did it, and I've always said that there's this thing to erase Kobe Bryant from history. There's this thing to erase Kobe Bryant from history. And now Bam's 83, because years later, trust me, years later, nobody's gonna remember how Bam got those 83. Nobody's gonna remember the intentional fouls. Nobody's gonna remember how it seems like he was intentionally going to break that record. Now, this is totally my opinion, just mine. I told a close friend of mine, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they have 10 or 15 years down the line that they come out and say that it was an orchestrated effort to get rid of Kobe, to destroy Kobe Bryant and remove him from that 81. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an effort. Thanks for the follow. To remove him. Because this is me. Again, this is my opinion. This is why I believe that they are attacking Kobe Bryant. Because anybody that they feel like is a threat to LeBron James's legacy, they gotta do away with him. So Kobe obviously isn't here to defend himself. So what you do, you go on a smear campaign. Thank you, Kendrick Perkins, for when, I don't know what the hell Dwayne Wade was on. I don't know if they throwed him a clutch check or what. But when Dwayne Wade got on TV and told that lie and said that during the rematch, because remember the Boston Celtics whooped their behind the first time. And he said in that game 7, everybody was saying that Pau Gasol was the greatest, should have won MVP because Pau Gasol was the best player in that series. And I'm so thankful for Kendrick Perkins. Kendrick Perkins was like, knock it off. You know who was playing in that series? Me. And he said Kobe understood the moment. See, this is why the game is destroyed, because everything is about a bag. Kyrie got a bag, and I love Kyrie, but I'm saying how the youth interpret this. Oh, yeah, such and such ain't got no bag. Everything is offense. Everything is offense. Everything is offense. Everything is offense. Scoring, 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 scoring. And Kendrick Perkins said that Kobe understood that his team needed him in other ways. And that's when he got those, correct me if I'm wrong, 17 rebounds, 15 to 17 rebounds. He's in the paint doing dirty work because he understood winning requires different things. And I just wish that we could understand collectively as a people that we don't have to do this. It don't always have to be who you got, Brandy or Monica. Who you got, Bow Wow or Romeo? Who you got, this person or that person? Anytime two people come up in a similar era, nobody ever said who was the best, who's the real Justin Bieber or Justin Timberlake. That argument never happens. Aaron Carter or Justin Bieber. That argument didn't happen. Because the system already knows that we are a mentally fragile people and we argue about everything. I could say Arm & Hammer is the best baking soda. And that'll start a goddamn argument over some other brand. Because we don't respect people's opinion. And that is the problem. That we can't respect people's opinion nowadays. And it's just sad to see what the game has become. It's sad to see things I just dislike about LeBron, how he whines, how he flops around on the floor, how he jumps up and down. Now he's in his 40s. He jumps up and down and has a tantrum when he doesn't get a call. This is what I mean by killing the spirit of the game. And everybody said, oh, well, y'all didn't say nothing with MJ. You ain't going to find MJ dropping up and down like that. You're not going to find Kobe Bryant because they had a different mentality. And then when you have people like Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski comes out and says it's MJ and Kobe, and Pat McAfee says, no, LeBron. And he's like, no. That's how we know it's always orchestrated. Because it's like you can't leave him out. And then this is when I started noticing something was funny when they would say, I'm just gonna give a random example. Oh, Steph Curry didn't put LeBron in his top 5. And that would become a national headline. As if this level of entitlement that he has to be in everybody. There are thousands of players. Thousands. Plenty to choose from. And I always, whenever I talk to my bros or people about this, I always say, I don't want him on my team. I don't want him on my team because he's going to be more of a distraction than he will be a reward. He's going to be more of a risk than he will be a reward. Yeah, I might get a championship, maybe even 2 out of that. But the headache that I'm going to go to, say if he's with me for 4 to 5 years, I may win a championship 1 or 2 of those years. Spread them out. But those other years are going to be purity hell. I'm going to have to give up draft picks, and he's done it over and over and over and over. And the fact that people can't catch on to the narrative of that last time he was in Cleveland, and Shannon would be, as my man in Dream Pro Sports say, Shannon would be twerking it up on TV saying, just get Bron right in the hood. Just get him anybody, and you would get him these players, and he would stank it up even more. And then they would blame the players. But when he would do it, how do you think that makes the other players feel? That when he does it, he's toting a bunch of bombs. Now you're calling other grown men that get up and do this profession too bombs. He carried a bunch of bombs. And then if he lose, they say, well, he had a bunch of bombs. So they bombs regardless. It's always, whenever they win, he's always going to be the reason for the season. And whenever he loses, it's always going to be somebody else. And that has destroyed the spirit of the game. You're a team. When Kobe Bryant lost that finals to the Boston Celtics and they put BTA, I remember that game. I was very upset watching that game. But they didn't call Pau Gasol, Andrew Bynum. They didn't call them bums. Guess what they did? They worked hard and they got back there. And they got their revenge. So, in my lasting comments, I just want to say that to my people, there's enough room for all of us. Stop buying into this narrative that there can only be one. No, there can be the ones. You know what I'm talking about? But let me know what you think about this.